Hello and welcome to another exciting news-filled episode of Bodied, a Cloud9 fancast. I'm your host, Havokpus. Frozen can't be here, but I am joined by Dr. Manhatten.
Hello,
How are you?
everyone. Glad to be here for just another exciting week of Cloud9 esports.
Yes, a lot of news happened, a lot of stuff happened. Before we can get into jibber-jabbering about results, we have some really big news. Cloud9 had announced that they have started, or will be starting, their own organization-run podcast. It is going to be called Head in the Clouds, and it seems to be more from the perspective of like the players and the org. I'm really excited for it because it seems like we finally get some content from C9 on a podcast level, and having players and coaches, and I would assume others kind of come in and talk about a lot of stuff Cloud9, and it'd be really interesting and really cool to see like their perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah, and even if they're doing their thing up with the whole Head in the Clouds thing, I mean, ultimately it excites me as well, just because it ultimately, I like seeing people like push the bar, especially from like when they have more resources like Cloud9, which we know probably has all the resources to start a really good podcast at their disposal. And even though they can keep it polished, one thing I do appreciate from this place, or like I think that we can hope, that we can, like, the kind of niche that we can suit for you guys. That, I mean, we ultimately never really censor ourselves, and really we just try to keep it as real as possible for everyone listening to us. I mean, we've been doing this for 100 some episodes now, so I mean, it's good to see something else in the mix, and who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, for sure, and I like us kind of bringing the fan perspective versus what this would be kind of the organizational perspective. We kind of bring a raw, maybe more of a more emotional, certainly not as knowledgeable opinion. I'm really excited. Frozen has also prepared a statement. He's not here, but he asked me to read this. Frozen says, "While we're just as excited for the official Cloud9 podcast as you are, there is still a unique niche for fans to give input on the organization and our performance from afar. We haven't discussed ending the podcast, and while we may have been bodied, we're not stepping down without further deliberation. If anything, it's a unique challenge for us to step up our game." And I agree. I really would like to see us sort of polish the podcast. Life gets in the way, and because of that, it's really difficult to do something like that, but I would like us to eventually really step up the quality as well as sort of the discussion and whatnot. So hopefully this gives us the push we need to become a better rival to Cloud9's podcast.
Yeah, ultimately, the more the more kind of minds you really have just circling over, the more opinions you have. Maybe we could have the same opinion, but ultimately have different ways of saying it. It's ultimately better for the fans who've been listening to us for all this time. So yeah, you guys have every right to be excited.
Yeah, exactly. So, real quick, Doctor, I am going to just talk about a few really quick, small results. Nothing too big. First off, PUBG is able to stay top 3. I believe the NPL is in its 3rd or 4th week. The team has really been able to stay at the top, despite not having Moody, who was a really big player in the PUBG team for 6 to 8 months last year, where they got a bunch of big wins. So it's really good to see that. Hearthstone is actually participating in events. Excitement. Colento is playing at the Star Ladder Hearthstone Ultimate Tournament, and C9, who signed a bunch of Korean players recently, within the last month or two, they're participating in the Korea versus China Hearthstone Championship Tournament. Colento, I believe, won both of his games, and our Korean players sadly lost to Lucky Star. Finally, Rocket League participated in the DreamHack Circuit Tournament, and they got knocked out of quarterfinals, unfortunately. This was to NRG, who was and still is a very big powerhouse within Rocket League, so everyone has bad games, and hopefully they can bounce back and still be strong as we know they are. But sorry that was a little fast, but that was about it.
Yeah, these weren't really like anything noteworthy, and the only one that I could even talk about mainly is the Rocket League one, which I mean that was just an unlucky matchup where we got against NRG, and NRG is not a team that you can sneeze at when you say, "Oh, we lost to them." You know, I mean, Cloud9 has been doing quite some time, and who knows, maybe they're just feeling a bit exhausted or fatigued, and you know maybe. Like I mean, it's really nothing to just be concerned with this team. This team is still among the best in the world in Rocket League, so I would just kind of take it with just a slight grain of salt.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the first big event results news is CS:GO. They were at IEM Katowice. They had a rough challengers start. They lost to Tyloo and Vichy Gaming, which is a bit worrying because Asian teams are not as well known for, you know, skill and whatnot versus teams from other regions. They were able to get through that to the legend stage where they stomped MIBR 16-3. But then they themselves were crushed by Astralis 16-0. So what do you think of our performance so far, and how far do you think that we can get within this tournament?
In terms of the one against MIBR, I think that was probably one of the biggest like sighs of relief that we had in terms of how together this team is. I mean, MIBR again are kind of a shell of what they used to be, and again they just got Taco back probably I would say still in the new year. So even though the team on paper was like, oh, this is the old SK Luminosity that everyone knows and loves, I mean they're still working on a few things, but they're still not a bad team. As for the Astralis thing, I mean, I'm pretty sure they haven't been ever since like the whole musical chairs that's been happening with our lineup. Like, we are not a really good train team right now, and lo and behold, you play against literally the best team in train in the world, and the best team in the world in Astralis, who actually, they are the only teams to ever get a 16-0 at a major, because the last time they did it was the last major when they placed, I think they faced against MIBR, back when they had both Stewie and Tarek on the lineup, but like, yeah, it's just, it is... You know, while it's, you look at a 16-0 and say, oh god, like that's so bad. It's like, I mean, it's Astralis. I mean, it's nothing. It's not like you can just say, oh, you lost to Astralis. It's like, yeah, you lost to the best team there. And it's just,
of course, you lose to Astralis.
Yeah, I mean, who at this point, like, who isn't better? Who is better than Astralis at this point? It's like probably no one. And people are already kind of, even though it's kind of early in the legend stage, people are already sending them off to the winner. So it's like, you know, it happens. And actually, for round 3, we're it's looking a bit, somewhat more optimistic because we drew against somewhat optimistic, but I would say be careful. Is that we drew up against for round 3 tomorrow against Vitality, which you guys don't know. That's basically I described it as the other half of the old Envious roster that won the major that split up. So this is the one with Zaiwu, Apex, NBK. Like, these are probably some names you guys recognize. Relatively formidable team from France, arguably. The best team from France. It's always them in G2, always fighting for French CS:GO domination. But I mean, I would say this is one of the most, because I mean it's Swiss, so it makes sense that they put us against that. This is probably the real test for C9 to see where they are in skill, and if they lose this round 3, or at least like I hope that they keep it somewhat competitive, because it would hurt them considering this is like the halfway point to get into the legend or to the legend stage right now. Or yeah, the knockout stage. But you know, as for how I see them doing this major, we could come close to legend status. I would say that's our best case scenario. In the best of 8, who knows? But I would say I'm comfortable saying right now that legend status is pretty possible.
Yeah, I think that they can definitely do it. As far as going deeper into the main stage, I'm not so sure. Because they'll be up against some stiff competition, especially if they have to face Astralis again. I really don't want to do that. But I've been impressed with Zelsis and his ability just to keep up with the other seasoned players. You know, Keo has been really popping off and been impressing a lot, and Automatic is basically the team's new star player. And, you know, Flusha has become a pretty good leader for the team, which he has so much experience in, so that's a no-brainer. So I think that the team is doing really good, and they're definitely showing the results that the play that fans want. But I'm not sure how much their current level can get them.
Yeah. But I mean, majors, we see some pretty crazy things. I mean, if you look at HLTV right now, they had NRG as a top 5 team, and they're starting off 0-2, losing to NIP and a Vanguard, which I'm just like, NIP kept it somewhat competitive against TL just recently, so I'll give them that. But like, a Vanguard was not looking like the hottest team going into this right now. So I mean, these things happen. I mean, who knows at these majors? But again, all eyes, like, that's one match I'm gonna be glued on, is to see how Cloud9 does against Vitality, because I feel like if they win that one, just the momentum will be pretty decent. And basically what I'm expecting, if they do go 2-1, they'll probably be matched up against the likes of like Renegades or like a FaZe clan, because I'm expecting them to also go 2-1, assuming Cloud9 goes 2-1 as well. That's how Swiss usually works. But yeah, I can expect, again, I think at the very least we can come relatively close to Legend status. Best case scenario, yeah, we probably make Legend status, which would be nice.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's about it. I can't think of anything else to say CS:GO wise.
Yeah. Again, it's just like we're smack in the middle of the Swiss rounds for Legend status. So I mean, a lot has been going on right now, and like I've basically been having all my eyes glued to watching as many of these games as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to Overwatch, we have some news. Starting off with the British Hurricanes, it looks like they've gotten rid of a few people. They first got rid of their coach, and then shortly after that, I forgot his name, so I have to look it up. They also said goodbye to Dream, who I believe is I don't know what position he's actually in. Let's see. Oh, he was a we lost people. It doesn't matter who was playing. Anyway, we lost some people, unfortunately. Hopefully the British Hurricanes can bounce back.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking it up. It was Nesh, who apparently that's his name, who played. I believe he was a DPS. Mainly.
Yeah, Nesh was the player and Dreams was the coach. I got them mixed up.
Yeah. That's basically.
Apologies.
Yeah, that's fine. Dream is going over to being the head coach of Montreal Rebellion, who actually has a few familiar names right now. You guys may know Logix from Florida last year, and Nomi, who I believe was on I believe was on Los Angeles, or no, he was on San Francisco Shock for a bit, and actually was also on Goats. Ironically, they're going to be the theme of Overwatch from the looks of it. But like anybody, especially with the British Hurricane, I wish the absolute best for these guys.
Yeah, for sure. Contender season's kind of over, so we have nothing to talk about there. But we can talk a lot about Overwatch, because I have a lot of Overwatch opinions. Starting with the London Spitfire went 0-2 in their opening week of Stage 1 of the Overwatch League. They played against a rematch between the Philadelphia Fusion, and then they played the Paris Eternal. And I gotta say, we do not look good.
I mean, this is right now, unfortunately, I don't want to say the worst possible thing we could have asked for. In terms of,
it's pretty close.
It is in terms of probably like not only just the results, but I mean when you think about the meta, like I mean when tanks and like these like light death ball comps back in like stage 4 really started coming in, that was arguably some of the worst we'd ever seen like London play. Just because Gestures Reinhardt, he's not really terribly comfortable on that character. The lack, especially right now, Goats is just so much demanding on like the lack like on Zarya specialists. So I mean, and we saw Bird Ring Zarya wasn't anything special, and that's kind of what's hurting the team a bit, is just the lack of like true Zarya focus, or like lack of flexing in terms of having someone like Fury maybe playing Zarya, but then who plays Diva, and right now Goats is just such a really rigid meta that demands a lot of flexibility right now. Not to mention Paris, from what I was reading from a lot of the players they signed, they were a team that was so good on Goats. Like this is a team that like I think in some of the players were.
I think they were an all EU contenders team, and I think they were in contenders known as the best team to perform goats.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is like, and it's even more impressive when you consider like this is like the only lineup. Like some people were kind of like looking at the mix, because this is literally the only lineup that does not consist of a single like Korean. Like it is an all EU team, and like yeah, they have they have a really good tank lineup, which is again that along with whoever your Lucio player is, that's like the most important part of playing goats right now. So like, again, it's just possibly the worst meta you could expect London to do. Like what do we do this week? It's kind of it's going to be kind of rough considering you have. I mean, one, it shouldn't be too rough considering they're playing against the Washington Justice, who by all means were like considered the worst team in the league. So maybe that's like a small confidence booster that London can have. But from the looks of it, and especially how the developers at Overwatch have approached their idea of character balance in around Overwatch League, the coaching staff has to do something, because as far as what it looks like right now, GOATS isn't going away anytime soon. Either one, figure out a style of works, like there's like 2 or 3 different cup styles of GOATS that works or that are being played a lot now, but just either one, get comfortable with this, because it's not going away. And if you think it's bad now, you gotta remember that we have Hangzhou, the Spark, who are looking like they're a pretty decent GOAT team. Week after that, you got the Gladiators, probably one of the better North American GOATs teams. So, again, all I gotta say, London is just, if you think it's bad now, like just it might get a bit rougher now. So it's either figure it out or find something that heavy counters this thing, because it's very
for sure. And I think London's biggest issue is just that this reminds me a lot of during stage 3 and 4, and those stages required a lot more team cohesion and coordination, which London is really bad at. Like, not super bad at, but they really struggle with. And GOATS requires a lot of that, when London really hinges off of individuals just playing like full board, just let Prophet and Birdring and Bedosin and everyone just pop off and be really good individually. GOATS takes the individual out of it, and it's more about teamwork, coordination, and London really struggles with that. I think they definitely need to just seriously work on it. I know that they were boot camping a lot before the season started, but it's really worrying when they have such poor showings going into the first week. I also think that this, and this sounds a little petty, but I think that this is somewhat the developers' fault. Before the season had started, there were several people, pros and regular online players, saying GOATS is not healthy for the game, it is not good, we don't like it, please fix it. And so far there hasn't really seemed to be that many big changes to fix GOATS. And the developers, and what's really annoying is that I tried to watch a lot of games last week, and pretty much every map was just GOATS, 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 GOATS. And it was super boring. And it just created really uninteresting team fights, uninteresting matches in general, and I really didn't want to watch a lot of it. And I think this is all because Overwatch, balanced team, has just kind of dropped the ball on listening to people when they really should have, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, there's very few like S tier like level comps or S tier level stuff that we see like go on. And like, yeah, London style, I agree with you, it's more remnant, ironically, like a lot of stuff that I think other Cloud9 teams like to do. Like a lot of it is just individual skirmishes and just going after, like, I mean, we saw it during Dive Comp. Like we saw Prophet, Birdring, and like back when we had like Rascal, like they had no trouble doing like that stuff. They just would always go in your face and fight. This is a bit more. You can't really be overextending. You can't you can't really you have to play a bit, even like when you're attacking, you still have to play a bit more defensive, and you have to be coordinated. And that's just something that London seems to be struggling with. I mean, they put in Guard, who's like the Sombra specialist, I think, against Paris, and it looked better. But I think there are, as long as, and I do agree, yeah, that the developers kind of just are turning a blind eye to how oppressive GOATS is, especially at the highest levels of play. Because again, I think that's in a game like Overwatch, that's something you want to focus on, is what the highest levels of play. But I remember a super who was talking on Oversight with Thorin and Monty saying like, well, I feel like Overwatch kind of turned a blind eye because they had the excuse of, oh, we don't have enough data. Well, now they have an entire server the tournament server where Overwatch League matches are played, and they see more data, and they're just like, okay, now we have hard data to see what's the problem, what should we do to address this, blah 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 blah. But like, yeah, it was kind of unfortunate to see them turn a blind eye to goats, but again, it's just they have to figure out this character pool problem, because it's safe to say that this is not going to go away for the rest of stage 1. So it's really crunch time for London.
Indeed, I hope they can do better. I always like it when the London Spitfire prove me wrong, so hopefully they can. But moving on to League of Legends, our Academy team. How did the Academy team do? I wasn't able to really pay attention much to the matches last week.
Yeah.
Did they go 1-1?
I believe
again?
they did. I'm pulling it up right about now. They did. They went 1-1. They lost. They beat FlyQuest Academy, which is kind of a relief. They're one of the better Academy teams. Looking at the Academy teams right now. One of the big players they have on FlyQuest is the infamous player Duo King, who some of you guys may know as formerly Consensual Clown. Really good support, but and they also had our former boy Selfie, but that would have to be good for them. Shiro, now Kumo got completely popped off that match, and then unfortunately we dropped to like a barely playoff on Academy right now, which is CLG. But sucks because again we could have been tied at the top of the Academy ladder, but we're still top 2 right now. We're second at a 7-3 right now.
Well, that's certainly reassuring. I think C9's biggest issue, at least for their Academy team, is that they put a lot through playing through Kumo. When they allow Kumo to really do his thing, as well as Blabber just not inting, I think the team does a lot better. I think that Blabber does not maybe have the necessary direction to really be a good leader, because he wants to just fight a lot. Whereas I think when you look at Sven is able to kind of play a more measured game, so Blabber's hyper-aggressive Psychofish style doesn't really work and pan out a lot. And I think also Golden Glue has not been having the insane performance that he had last season. So it's kind of sad, since last season he was like popping off and like crushing everybody that he was pretty much playing. And this year he's not looking as hot, which is kind of unfortunate.
Definitely agree. It is unfortunate to see. However, I do want to see them pick it up this week, because while they do have not the hardest one against Golden Guardians Academy, the only player I've ever even heard on that team is like Zig and Benji. But even then, they're still at near the bottom of the Academy ladder. We do have to play against TSM Academy right now, which if they were to win that, then that means that even if they force the tiebreaker, we would take a lead, because we already are we winning the. I think we are winning the 1-0. No, we're currently tied. We're losing the 1-0 with TSM, but we could actually force a tie by beating TSM Academy, who are at the top right now. That's the team they have a Blaze Olive, and Brandini and I think Fnatic and Greg are splitting time. But they're under the really, really good coaching of Peter Zong, who, if you guys remember, was the old TL coach from 2015, also with LMQ, if you remember that old team. But I would say I definitely hope that they can just turn it around and again start playing around more resources for the team and just kind of play a bit smarter in that regard. Because again, TSM Academy are 8-2 right now, and they're pretty much no joke. So I'm excited to see what they can do against TSM Academy this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully they can have some good matches. I don't have much to say, but let's move on to League of Legends, because we probably have a lot to talk about there. C9 has another breakout 2-0 weekend, and they, I gotta say, crushed it.
Yeah, it was really, really I had pretty decent expectations for them. On paper, it wasn't really the most difficult week. But then that's kind of the weekends where like usually with weekends like that, like when I'm like, okay, this should be business as usual, because it was like what Echo Fox and Optic, like they were like around the bottom of the standings, and I'm just like, they should just be business as usual. They killed it. They absolutely just they I don't want to say they met him, but they just slightly went above my expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised to see some of the stuff that they pulled off.
Yeah, for sure. I think watching the Echo Fox game, and we can talk about that one a bit first. It was a little weird watching Rush just like not do anything for the whole game, because Rush is, he's coming in and everyone's hyping up like, the Kind Boy's back. Oh, Rush is gonna like just crush everybody, and I gotta say Rush really hasn't been living up to expectations, and especially with this game where he just did not do anything on Lee Sin, which you kind of have to do to help your team out and help yourself out, and he didn't do anything, and C9 just slowly but surely ran all over them.
Yeah, really, I think one of the main reasons as well that contributes to this is the fact that we're still on 8-3. We're going to still be on 8-3 afterwards. But one of the things you don't want to do right now is, if you're on red side, you don't want to give up Urgot, because while Urgot did receive nerfs in this patch notes that came out today, of day recording it, I mean, he's the undisputed king of the king of the top right now, because I mean, Akali received significant nerfs, so did Aatrox. Sion received just a few nerfs, but I mean, unless you're like a really good Sion player, like a really good tank player, it's just, you're not going to do anything against an Urgot in that lane, because all he needs is a Black Cleaver, and he just starts affecting the whole map. On top of, I don't know why Apollo went with the Varus pick, especially because, I mean, that's something that can easily be negated by like Syndra, and the lack of reliable escapes from Varus. I mean, if Zay's on the Alistar just goes with his usual just headbutt pulverize combo, you're base, unless Morgana has the perfect shield there, you're pretty much fucked every time. So it just felt like the Varus pick was just so unorthodox.
I will say Zazel played his Alistar really well that game. All of his engages and all of his combos were really well executed, and I think he was a really big part in setting up fights and able to kind of corral people the right way and stuff. So I think he definitely needs to get a lot of praise there, even though Sneaky was the one who got the almost penta.
They denied him the penta, unfortunately. That was just that. But
if I was Hakuho, I would have just given the penta. Your team's already dead. There's nothing you can do. Just give him the penta.
But Sneaky denied it in the most sneaky way I could ever think of just him. He just baited everyone. It was just so hysterical.
He made 3/5 of his team die.
But yeah, it was good stuff seeing out of them regardless, and seeing how they could play around that, especially with Licorice, and and especially again punishing the Varus pick so well was really good by Cloud9.
Yeah, and it was, the Echo Fox game was just really great in general. Moving on to the Optic game, I don't even know what Optic is doing. Like you have Crown of all mid laners, and Meteos, like one of the best jungler, like one of the, at least in my opinion, one of the smartest junglers who's playing in NA right now. And how does this happen? What are you doing?
It's strange because of the fact that, I mean, it seems like the two players that everyone's probably hyped up for Optic, which are Crown and Meteos, that's pretty much the only people who seem to be doing anything right. Like, I mean, if you saw the C9 game, like, they had a pretty good early game, and not only that, the day before they played against TSM, where it seemed like they had pretty good control over the top side, and Meteos, who was doing work on that game, but like one bad fight around Baron, and like, they're the most throw-prone team that I've ever seen in the LCS. Like, it's just, they have good leads. If you look at their stats, like, they have pretty decent leads, but something about them is just, right when it comes down to the wire, like the mid games, it just falls apart in the absolute worst ways ever. And I'm glad that C9 was able to punish that, because again, it just seems like, while productivity still seems like kind of the meta, like the fact that C9 can show, hey, playing from behind is still a skill that you need. And the fact that I think they were going with a few more unorthodox picks. Like, I think that Svenskeren went with a Nocturne, which is a heavy dive, which is weird.
Which I also never expected, and
yeah,
I was actually just like writing off, because there was no protection for the Nocturne, right? Like usually when C9 plays Nocturne, they get like a Galio or what Zeyzal did with the Shen pick.
Some people would go like
they
Zillion,
have some. Yeah, they would have some way to protect him to allow him to dive in, but they didn't do that, which I think maybe threw Optic a bit off guard.
Yeah, they opted into like a full dive comp with like the Zoe, the Rakan, and the Zaya. Like it just seemed like the way they wanted to win that one is just get in your face and try to out like maneuver you, which at first it wasn't working in these 2v2 skirmishes. Like again, Medios was doing quite well in that on the top side, but like it came to a point where Optic just realized, especially with like the Ahri pick that Crown had, it just once team fights came along and once you started diving the Kai'Sa and the Olaf, like it just seemed like there was really little you could do besides just try to out damage them, which at a certain point, like you stop out damaging them because Zoe's like, even after, getting a few kills with Zoe the late game is really good, and Urgot's just this giant meatball that will just wreck everyone.
Exactly, and Optic even had that game sort of until they had just the most bizarre fight top lane where they killed Medios and Crown like immediately through like a bush camp, and then Dokla for some reason is channeling the TP and he can't cancel it, so he's dead too. And it just becomes a shit show, and then C9 just goes, oh, we get Baron, we end, and then easy peasy.
Yeah, and no, like I mean, again, what I will credit for them again is just they seem to have a pretty good draft because Yorick is a really prevalent pick right now in the top lane, and Dokla's kind of a Yorick hipster. If you guys watched last year where he was playing a few Yorick games, even during the carry tank or the carry top metas, or like just some of these like traditional tank like top laners, like it was really smart of them to do that. And again, Optic, this is the lesson that Echo Fox learned the hard way, and that's you don't give up the Urgot pick on red side because it's such an oppressive pick. And I think C9's playing a few red side games this week, or if they are, it's just please, Licorice will probably tell you the best. Do not give up that pick. It's so valuable.
Speaking of Licorice, I'm really impressed with his play so far this split. He's just been crushing just about every matchup that he has done, at least on like an individual basis. Like I've rarely seen him like really struggle to do anything, and he's always been able. He's just been able to just do everything, and he's just been playing like either Urgot or Sion, pretty much.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. I just really hope, and he's mentioned in interviews, like he's trying not to let it all get to his head because ultimately like he wants to just prove that he is not just the best native top laner, but like the best top laner like here. So yeah, like just in general, really really good work by Licorice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this weekend C9 is finishing up sort of their rotation for the round robin before it resets. They play FlyQuest on Saturday, February 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday they play against CLG once again for a rematch at 5 p.m. Eastern. So I think C9 has a pretty good shot to go 2-0 again. FlyQuest has looked good, but I think they haven't looked like the best. If you agree with that.
I agree with that. I think that one of the things with FlyQuest that I'm still questioning right now is like the ceilings for this team. And like while they look good, again, like they just look good, the thing about it is it just stops there, where it's like they look good, but like I just don't see like are they gonna challenge are they gonna absolutely challenge TSM who look good this weekend? Are they gonna challenge Team Liquid? Are they gonna challenge Cloud9? And I believe FlyQuest is only of all those teams I've mentioned, I think the only team that FlyQuest has actually played is that Team Liquid, which they did lose to. So it's like it just seems like they're kind of, it's funny, they actually remind me of the first iteration of FlyQuest back when they first joined the LCS 2 years ago, where it's like, yeah, you're better than like some of these other teams like Phoenix One or Envious or Immortals at that year when they were 7th place, where it's like, are you better than Cloud9 who's tearing it up? Are you better than TSM who was tearing it up that season as well? So like that's kind of where I question them. But looking at this week, based on what I've seen in terms of the future schedules, unless 100 Thieves somehow has managed to turn on the entire ship, I'm very comfortable in saying this will probably be the hardest week for the remainder of the season for Cloud9. Because, yeah, you also have FlyQuest, a good team, and CLG, it's just, you never know what to expect from them, and it seems like Power of Evil has been it seems like the team realizes, oh crap, Power of Evil is actually really good. Go figure. So, from now on, this is going to be the first half of the round robin, and then once the second half starts, the only teams that, like, again, I'm nervous about, or like I would say like I'm the most nervous about, are probably like TSM and Liquid after this. Like, again, I'm very, very optimistic, or at least comfortable again saying that this is going to be the most difficult week for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing that really, for me, kind of writes off FlyQuest is just that the roster doesn't seem really that special. There's nothing that really sticks out and goes, ooh, FlyQuest. You know, it's usually just like, oh, well, they have Pobelter and Wild Turtle. Eh.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I describe them is they're just above average. Where it's like, people are looking at Cloud9 and saying like, oh no, this is definitively the second best team. Like, they have a very firm hold on that. These guys. I mean, the rest of the guys, just like, yeah, you have two rookies and like Viper, and JJ's not a rookie, but he's still kind of getting his feet wet. The coaching staff is good. Again, Cop did some good stuff on Dignitas and was doing okay on Optic. And then, yeah, you have Pobelcher, he's never going to lose the game, he's never going to win, and Turtle is somewhat of a coin flip. So again, like, this team, I say like the real star of that team is Santorin, which is I'm excited to see. It's always actually last year was exciting to see him and Svenskeren kind of duke it out, but yeah, I just don't see this team as like they're good, but it's just they're above average, and teams like Cloud9 are just like these are the teams we're looking to gun for the whole thing. Or like I don't see that in FlyQuest.
Yeah, that same here, and I think looking at CLG, this roster is definitely a wild card. If you never know if they're going to play really well or not play well at all. Wiggly has had good moments, but he has also had bad moments. Same with Darshan. PoE, I think, is trying his best. He seems definitely to be the strongest member of the team, and I think it's just him trying to hope that his other teammates don't do too bad.
Yeah, it's a pretty fair comparison for them right now. But I will say, for just fans of like the LCS watching this weekend, I just want you to pay like the two teams we're facing this weekend also have to face TSM, and they're pretty much all within arm's reach. Like FlyQuest, CLG, like you have CLG and TSM already tied at 4-4. On top of the fact that you have FlyQuest at 5-3, where we're 6-2, so you want to keep your eyes on the team, not only when they play Cloud9, but when they play TSM as well, because like you're gonna see potential hell break out in the standings this weekend, as in that top 5 standings. So just not just for our sake, just watch these two teams, because again, how good they do against TSM, or if they go 0-2, will really start to give us a clearer understanding. Because again, the first round robin is it after FlyQuest. This is the first half. We're already halfway through the regular season, so it'll give us a clearer picture, is I would say what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess we should close it out with our predictions for next week, or this weekend, rather. So what do you think, Dr. Manhatten?
I would say for the FlyQuest one, 2-0. I think it's pretty simple. To beat them. They're one of these typical NA ramped teams. That's actually even what Ole described them as in Hotline League this weekend. He described them as like this really stall to 40 minutes, play Ezreal, force them in the mid lane, fight up, we win. I would say the kind of the way you played with Optic last week, being more proactive, trying to go for these early 2v2 skirmishes with Viper and Santorin. That's how you do it. And if Niski can make Pobelter not a threat, then we should be good there. In terms of CLG, while they're getting better, I would say pressure more around bot lane and then pressure more around mid lane. Licorice and Darshan shouldn't really be a matchup that you should be worried about. Svenskeren's usually always has been significantly more experienced than Wiggly, so I'm not nervous there. Again, if you can just find a way to do these really good 2v2 skirmishes in mid against Wiggly and Power of Evil, and if you can not have them, similar to FlyQuest, if you can not just force them into a fight in mid lane at like 40 minutes where they have like an Ezreal or a Sivir, then you should be more than good to go for that fight.
Yeah, for sure. I think this can be a 2-0 weekend. C9 has been looking really good, and if they can keep their heads about them and keep their form, they should be again one of the best teams in the LCS. So hopefully it'll be a good weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
All right, well, that's it for another episode of Bodied. Catch us again next week. We're not going anywhere. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again real soon. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at C9Bodied. Ask us questions, interact with us. We will interact with you back. So, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
We'll see you again next time, guys. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.